Good evening. I'm Rebecca Johnson. I'm the BCAN's Director of Research. We are going to move into our Quale Travel Fellows portion of the evening. So if I could ask our fellows to start making their way up to the stage. We're just going to take a few minutes to add chairs. And it's my pleasure to introduce Drs. Petros, Grivas, and Max Cates as the co-chairs for the Quale Travel Fellows Scientific Review Group. We are very grateful for them to help us select and evaluate the excellent cohort of fellows we have this year. To Petros, who has served in this role for several years now, and to Max, who will be taking the torch and continuing as chair next year. So I will hand it over to them, and thank you both very much.
Hello everybody. Fantastic to be here. What I call a family meeting, a family tradition once a year. Thanks so much to the BCAN. I have been trying to do this accent, my Greek accent, BCAN, pronunciation for years. I hope I got it down correctly. So the beacon of hope and light, as Diane said, and very excited to see this patient panel, literally such an opportunity for us to learn from patients, hear from patients, and take that into account as we design clinical trials. And since we talk about research, and of course research is about mentorships, about successions, about moving the field forward, we're very, very excited to introduce the next session here, which is the Quale Travel Fellow Awards. As Diane mentioned before, this is a very dear theme of, we'll invite everybody. Absolutely. Dear topic in our hearts and for BCAN mission. As Stephanie is nicely prompting me, I think we should probably invite all the 8 Quale Travel Fellow awardees to come and join us on the stage. Max and me are tasked to introduce them and welcome them to the BCAN community. So we're very excited for all of them. And before we start introducing the amazing awardees we have today, 8 of them, I want to say a few thank yous, and I try to make sure I don't forget anybody. Stephanie, hold me accountable here. So first and foremost, and Max, of course, will do a great job as always. First and foremost, the first thank you goes to BCAN, the staff, the team. So Stephanie, Rebecca, another Rebecca, and Valerie and everybody. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing. And of course, a special thanks to Diane Quale, and of course, her late husband, John, who has been an inspiration, for getting this scholarship award done. So a big applause to Diane and John's memory. Very, very honoring to continue this inspiration and tradition. The other big thank you, I think, goes to all the reviewers. I know all of us are super busy every day serving our patients, the mission of research and education, and I know it's very important to recognize that everybody took time out of their personal time and professional time to review this amazing application. So thanks to all the reviewers for doing this work. And of course, the thanks goes to also the multiple mentors and all the applicants. I think, Max, you would agree, has been such a difficult task, to select these 8 wonderful awardees here, because the pool of applicants was tremendous. And I think Max and me said the same thing, that if we were the applicants back early in our careers, we probably wouldn't have that much luck to be invited because of the quality of the amazing applicants. So thanks to all the applicants and their mentors for putting time, energy, and as I say, emotion to getting these applications in. So we definitely had a very hard task, and I think, we took into account the scores that were independently given by the reviewers. We tried to ensure multiple reviewers per application to ensure as much as diversity as possible in the scoring, but also other aspects of diversity when it comes to specialty, urology, medong, radong, and other specialties, institutional diversity, geographical diversity, of course, race, ethnicity, and all those important aspects of diversity that BCAN really, really values. So after this, my classically long Athenian introduction, Max knew about it already. I would like to actually, Max, you want to say a couple of words before we start?
I'll just add one or two things. Petros, how many years have you chaired this group? Because I'm curious.
It has been 3 years, and I neglect to say that I took over from Dr. Ginny Hoffman-Sensis, which is the audience, so an applause to Ginny as well.
So yeah, I just wanted to give kudos to Petros for leading this effort. And once again, I think that the conference has morphed quite a bit in terms of the breadth of talent from a lot of different aspects of bladder cancer, whether it's translational science or, as Petros said, radiation oncology, medical oncology. And when we come together as a community, one of the beautiful things about this meeting is that we're trying to bring in ideas outside of the convention, outside of the box, and think about bladder cancer in a different light. So rather than recapitulate what is going on today, we're trying to actually anticipate where do we want to be. And to be able to do that, we want to bring in talented people from a lot of different areas. And so that is what was done, and we're really excited about this. And I'll also say there's many very talented individuals that are not on this stage that nevertheless are at this meeting and are going to be able to participate in future BCAN meetings, because we all felt that the talent of this class of applicants was so impressive. So without further ado, Petros, do you want to get started?
Thanks, Max. Fantastic, and I'm really, honored to work with Max in this, and Max will do a fantastic job, continuing this tradition. So we'll start with the first 4 awardees, and then Max will take over for the rest. So we'll start with Dr. Saad Atik. Dr. Atik is a clinical fellow in medical oncology at the NIH. Dr. Atik actually has a very important project. It's a clinical trial, talking about clinical trials at the previous session, Diane, a phase 2 trial of enfortumab vedotin, pembrolizumab, and N803 in patients with metastatic urothelial carcinoma previously treated with platinum-based chemotherapy. Dr. Atik's mentor is the very well-known to us, Dr. Andrea Apollo, the NCI, and Dr. Atik is a clinical fellow in medical oncology there. He received his medical degree from the University of Arkansas for medical sciences and completed his residency in internal medicine at Duke. He had his training there, and that's where he became very interested in gender urinary cancers, and eventually led to his recruitment, right, in the NCI and working with Dr. Apollo and the team there. Dr. Atik quoted, he's interested in the bladder cancer think tank because of the intellectual curiosity to learn from those leading the change in bladder cancer research, as well as a desire to collaborate with these innovators in a shared goal of advancing research efforts and, as a result, the overall care of patients. Again, patients with bladder cancer. Dr. Atik, thank you so much. Congratulations. And I will invite you to say a few words and present briefly your research. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. So my name is Saad Atik, and I am a second-year medical oncology fellow at the National Cancer Institute within the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And I have to say I'm very relieved that I made it through that first statement, because when I was practicing this in my head a couple of seconds ago, I said I was a first-year medical student. And, I didn't want to get up here and say that, but, I think the sentiment kind of holds true in that, just like during my first year of medical school, I was very nervous, but very excited to be there and to learn from everyone. And equally, I'm, just as excited and nervous being up here, but very excited and grateful to be here and learn from all of our patients, our patient advocates, and our disease experts. So thank you all for having me here today. And thank you, Dr. Grivas, for the introduction. Just a bit of background about me. So I'm originally from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which is a small town in southeast Arkansas. And that's really kind of where I first, became interested in oncology as a specialty. It sounds strange in small town Arkansas, but, when I was a child, there was one particular story where I remember being at a grocery store with my father, who is an oncologist, and, a patient's family member came up to him and said, "Thank you for how you cared for our family member." I didn't really understand what went on in the room when he was caring for their family member because I was 7 or 8 years old. But I told myself it had to do something with the relationship that he established with that patient and their family, and he was able to guide them through a difficult time. And I've kind of held that sentiment, close to heart as I've pursued a career in oncology. And it was really, nice to hear when Doug on the patient panel brought up how, it was that trust that he had in his oncologist. I think Jim and Mary said kind of the same sentiment, that really kind of, helped them pursue or go into a clinical trial. And so hopefully I'll have that same relationship with my own patients. I kind of deviated from my script a bit here, but that when they brought that up during the patient voice panel, it really kind of hit a note with me. So, that's kind of why I originally wanted to become an oncologist. I was in Arkansas most of my life, and I decided that it was time for a change, to see some new ways of thinking and gather some new experiences. And so that's what pushed me to go to Duke for my internal medicine residency. And it was there that I found my first really career mentor in Dr. Dan George. And in Dr. George, in his clinic, I saw a broad range of genitourinary malignancies. I saw the kind of intersect of, a physician who's very active in clinical and translational research. But what again really stood out to me was, of course, Dr. George knew the numbers in the trials that he was involved in and the research. But, when he was guiding patients in their decision-making, he understood at a personal level what it was that their overarching goals were. And, I carried that forward with me when I started looking for fellowships where I could kind of pursue a career as a clinical investigator. I subsequently matched at the NIH, and I found my current mentor, Dr. Andrea Apollo. And again, Dr. Apollo, for anyone who knows her, I'm sure most people in the room do, of course, she has an incredible attention to detail. She cares for her patients so much, but every time I'm in clinic with her, even this current week, earlier this week, I see that she is not necessarily trying to guide patients to encourage patients to just enroll in a trial. She's trying to understand what it is that the patient has as their overarching goal, and then tries to guide them using that overarching goal to help them make decisions in their care. Under Dr. Apollo's guidance, I've started exploring what it is that I'm passionate about in urothelial cancers. And I found an interest in the mechanisms of resistance that, patients are developing to treatments, and how we can potentially overcome these mechanisms of resistance with either novel therapeutics or combination therapies. I'm interested in working closely with physician scientists on clinical and translational research projects, and the project I'll be talking about during the poster session tomorrow is one of that nature. So the project I'll be talking about is essentially a clinical trial protocol, but I'll be more talking about the preclinical model that we are basing the protocol that we're designing off of. And essentially what it is a combination of 3 drugs that, 2 that are quite well known, one enfortumab vedotin, or Padcev, an antibody drug conjugate that's become quite prominent in bladder cancer. The second, pembrolizumab or Keytruda, immunotherapy. And then a third, which Doug had mentioned, Alt-803 or N803, which is an IL-15 superagonist or immune cytokine that can kind of stimulate the immune system. And so the trial that we're designing is essentially a combination of those treatments in patients with metastatic urothelial cancer who've previously been treated with platinum-based chemotherapy. What I'll be talking about tomorrow during the poster session is the preclinical data that we're generating that is helping build the foundation for this trial. So we've been performing mouse model studies using this triplet combination, and we finished the tolerability portion to see if this treatment is well tolerated, and did not see any unexpected adverse events, saw that the body weights were well maintained, and it was quite reassuring in that sense. And we're currently performing the studies of efficacy to see how well the drugs work. I'll talk about this all more tomorrow during the poster session, but thank you again for having me here, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to learn from everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atik and Dr. Apollo, for this great work. And again, tomorrow it's a great day. In the afternoon, we have the poster session, so welcome everybody to stop by the fellows poster, discuss, interact with them, and learn each other and provide advice, feedback, so we can see these projects moving forward. So we're moving to the second awardee, and it's my opportunity to practice my Italian with you, Manuela, later. It has been a long time since I spoke. Dr. Manuela Krupi, hopefully I pronounced it correctly. He's a medical resident in an Institute of San Raffaele Hospital and Scientific Institute in Milano, Italy. I was there in Milan last November with Dr. Necchi, and I loved it. Dr. Andrea Necchi is Dr. Krupi's wonderful mentor. And the title of the project is Biology and Performance of pre- and post-pembrolizumab vesical imaging reported data system, the so-called VIRADS, which is based on MRI, to predict pathologic response in patients with muscle-invasive bladder cancer who receive pembrolizumab, and I think in the context of the PURO-1 trial that was designed and executed by the great team there in Italy with Dr. Necchi and his team. Dr. Krupi is a resident in San Raffaele Hospital and Scientific Institute. His main interest is bladder cancer. He received his master's degree in medicine and surgery from the University of Catania in Italy, and his license to practice both in Italy and Switzerland. And I know there is Italian canton, actually in Switzerland too. So in his personal statement, quoted here, I really think that the bladder cancer think tank meeting is a key for advancing collaborative research efforts in bladder cancer. Taking part in this meeting could allow him to improve my knowledge and meet and learn from leaders in the field. The primary mission of the think tank meeting is to enhance collaboration among physicians and researchers. I know that I'm young. I wish to learn, and I wish to learn more because my dream is to be worth the pride of my patients and my grandmother. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Krupi, and we'll invite you to tell us more about the project. Congratulations.
Hi everyone, I'm Emanuele Krupi and I'm a resident at Institute Vita Salute San Raffaele in Milan. There's one thing that you should be aware, I'm too chatty. I know. So I was struggling the last couple of days just thinking of how can I share in just a couple of minutes, 4 to 5 minutes with you what drives my patient, who inspired me, what drive me here, being part of this amazing opportunity. And then I thought, maybe I should just start from the beginning, from where I came by. And I came from a small city with no more than 3,000 people living there in the southern part of Italy, Sicily. It's a beautiful city, Ragalna, amazing people, maybe the kindest in the world, but as a lot of small city in the southern part of Italy, we have problems, of course, with transports. And we usually don't ask when will the bus come. We usually ask, will the bus come today? And I know it sounds like a joke, but it's also sad, because this led also to disparity. When you think that you are 1 hour straight away from an hospital, our patient, the elderly one, they are struggling to achieve, to access to primary care. And this is something. This is really hard. And I was thinking about it, and when I was just a child, both my grandparents were diagnosed by a stage 4 colon cancer, and it was already too late, and I think that was already too early when you think about it. And this morning I was walking this beautiful city, and I stopped by the monument of Theodore Roosevelt, and I see this quotes by him saying that the test of our progress is not whether we can add more to those they have already much, but is whether we can provide enough to those they have too little. And I was thinking about this, about disparities, you know, and these, it was all about what we achieve to destroy the walls of disparities, to guarantee our patient through collaboration, to advocacy network patient, to the main player of our team, our patient, how to together we can achieve, how to overcome disparities. And this is what led me to dedicate myself, my existence to be a medical doctor. And you might ask, but why blood cancer? And it all starts a couple of years ago during COVID pandemic. I was, during the COVID pandemic in 2021, I was in Switzerland. I was attending my second year of residency program there, and I'd attend an online meeting where I was speaking my mentor, today mentor, Professor Andrea Necchi, and was sharing with passion the results of Pure One trial. And I think that since then, it was like, I don't know, I was just inspired by one of the greatest, I think it's one of the greatest opinion leaders in the field and a great human being. And after a couple of months after, I came back to Italy and I wanted badly to be part of his great, amazing work. And I start again there with my residency program in medical oncology. And tomorrow I will talk about, just to give some hint, just some spoilers about our poster tomorrow. It's about this Pure One trial where patient with the locally advanced bladder cancer received 3 cycles of pembrolizumab, an anti-PD-1 immunotherapy, monoclonal antibody, before radical cystectomy, and we use multi-parametric MRI to evaluate our patient pre and post pembrolizumab, and then we correlate it with our primary and secondary endpoint, respectively PT1 and 0, primary endpoint, and PT0 and 0, because as I told you, early diagnostic and also the precision medicine, how we can predict, how we will know where the patient are going, it's crucial, I think. And we demonstrated this correlate low VIRADS, because we dichotomize this VIRADS score. It's like saying the lookability that you have a lesion from 0 to 5. It's most practically almost sure, you can say. And we see that with low VIRADS, we can predict how these patients are going and how it correlates with the primary and secondary endpoint. And I want to close my speech thanking you again, and being what means to me being part of this and this beautiful country. It is amazing. It is amazing. It's like a dream come true, and I wish this will be the first of many. Thank you.
Auguri and congratulations, Emanuele, fantastic, and I share your South European energy and enthusiasm, so I think Bisoy and Diane agreed with that part for sure. Wonderful, and thanks again. And the third awardee today, it's my honor and pleasure to present to you Dr. Elizabeth Connie from University of Washington. Her title project is Aim High. I like that. DNA methyltransferase inhibition and immune stimulation in bladder cancer. Dr. Connie's amazing mentors are Dr. Jonathan Wright and Dr. Milam, both from the University of Washington, encompassing this dual mentorship of clinical practice, clinical research, and translational science in the laboratory. So it's a great mentoring team. Dr. Connie is a fellow at the University of Washington. She received her medical degree from the University of Missouri School of Medicine and completed her urology residency at Loyola University Medical Center. Dr. Connie plans to practice as an academic urologic oncologist, and she's focusing on conducting translational research in bladder cancer field. She's very excited because she's part of the Society of Urologic Oncology Fellowship, SUO, and now she's in the second year of her fellowship at the University of Washington. I'll quote her personal statement. Attending the Bladder Cancer Advocacy Network think tank will help me connect with other scientists to learn about translational work that relates to my own, as well as expand my understanding of different areas of bladder cancer research that could provide a novel lens for my research questions. Participating in this meeting will help bring my laboratory-based research through the next phases towards improving treatment options for patients with bladder cancer. Dr. Connie, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thanks, Dr. Grivas. So as you can see, I'm Elizabeth Coney. I've gone by Betsy my whole life. I'm really happy to be here. I've been hoping to come to this meeting since I first learned about it a few years ago. So I'm really honored and thank you. And so, yeah, as Dr. Grivas mentioned, I'm the second-year urologic oncology fellow at the University of Washington, originally from Kansas City, Missouri, and then went to undergrad at Truman State, and then did my medical school education at the University of Missouri, followed by residency at Loyola in the Chicago area. And my commitment to the bladder cancer field and moving it forward for patients really first and foremost comes from my experience caring for patients with bladder cancer. And I think as we all here know that bladder cancer is a very complex and often morbid disease. And early in my training, I was fortunate to understand that I could go through those ups and downs of the treatment course with patients and their families, and therefore because I could do it, I should do it, and that I wanted to really do it to the best of my ability. And that was a main driver in my decision to doing a urologic oncology fellowship. And not only did I want to do it in the clinic and with each of my own patients, but really also from a research perspective, so that options for patients were more effective, longer lasting, and less toxic. And I've had several incredible mentors in residency and fellowship who have been role models for me in providing excellent care for patients, and then also for developing their own research interests, both from therapeutic perspectives and clinical trials to patient engagement. And so I'm really thankful to have learned from them. And so the research that I'll share tomorrow is work that I did under the mentorship of Dr. Jonathan Wright and Dr. Ming Lam in the GU Cancers Lab at UW. And ultimately, I looked at epigenetic modulation as a way to enhance expression of immune-related genes in bladder cancer and potentially prime it for future treatment with immunotherapy. And so in the lab, I used a diverse set of human bladder cancer cell lines and treated them with a combination of, either a demethylating agent on its own, a histone deacetylase inhibitor agent on its own, or the two of them together, and then looked at RNA sequencing, and particularly looked at immune-related genes. And ultimately, we found that epigenetic modulation can enhance expression of genes related to inflammation, interferon, cytokine and chemokine signaling, as well as pathways involved in T-cell differentiation and migration. In the future, I hope to really continue this as a true bench-to-bedside project and do in vivo mice studies, followed by phase 1 clinical trial. And ultimately, my goal is to contribute to developing treatment options for patients that are more effective and provide long-lasting results. Thank you.
Congratulations, Dr. Connie. Great work, and we look forward to exciting results and translational to clinical trials. The work is incredible. And last but not least, from the first group of the awardees, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Onika Noel. and Dr. Noel is a urology-oncology fellow at UT Health San Antonio. Dr. Noel, her project is a contribution of natural killer cells in mediating cytotoxicity in bladder cancer. And it's very exciting, Dr. Noel, because we have this session with Dr. Neelam Mukherjee on Friday morning, breakout session looking about innate and adaptive immune system and the contributions to bladder cancer pathogenesis and identifications of therapeutic targets. So very exciting about your project. And Dr. Mukherjee, speaking of whom, she's the primary mentor, along with Dr. Robert Zvatek, and I know both Neelam and Robert are in the audience here today. Dr. Noel is a urologic oncology fellow at University of Texas San Antonio, as I mentioned. She received her PhD in molecular biology in 2014, completed subsequently her medical degree in 2016, and finished urology surgery residency at the University of California, UC Davis, in 2022. Her research areas include health equity, molecular diagnostic and prognostics, and especially non-muscle invasive bladder cancer. I'll quote your statement, a personal statement. The Bladder Cancer Advocacy Network think tank meeting will be an excellent adjunct to my training thus far, as it facilitates collaborative interdisciplinary discussions focused on advancing the field. As a trainee, the opportunity of mentorship in this setting is invaluable, as you share an intimate space with experts and patient advocates who have the same passion for bladder cancer. This will not only guide me as I continue to lay the groundwork for an academic career, but it also ensures that I have the access to the resources to bring my goals to fruition. Dr. Noel, congratulations to you and your mentors. Looking forward to your presentation today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I will say I have been really anticipating going to this meeting for several years, like Betsy when I first learned of it. In my head, I imagined a very intimate group, so about a quarter of this size. So I guess more knowledge to be gained while I'm here. So I'm really honored and grateful to even be considered and to share the space with you all and the patients as well. I think it really was, thinking about the last session, a reminder of why we do what we do. And it was inspiring again to jumpstart this meeting with that patient panel. Again, thank you. My name is Onika. I'm a second-year fellow at UT San Antonio. I have wonderful mentors there that have been really nurturing both of my interests, not only in basic science, but also in clinical medicine and really looking at how we can have and deliver equitable care for patients from underserved populations. And those are two of my biggest passions. I came to medicine with an interest in science, and that's sort of what governed, all the steps that I took. I did biomedical engineering as an undergrad because I was really interested, even though I didn't know quite what that meant, in how does one marry science and medicine? And they both sound way better together than they did apart, and that's sort of how I've made each step subsequently. Interestingly, my decision to do urology had a lot to do with bladder cancer from the beginning. I was a medical student going to grand rounds, and I think it was a speaker who showed two lesions. One was a flat valvular lesion we know as CIS, and there's another papillary lesion. And he posed a question like, which one do you think has the worst outcome for patients? And I think it was sort of demonstrating that you would naturally think that flat, benign-looking thing is, going to be the not the troublemaker, and so just seeing that as a medical student, for me as a scientist, thinking about, wow, there's biology there to study, like why they're so different and they do different things, and I wanted to be a part of that understanding of how bladder cancer develops. So that's what sort of led me to urology and to think about oncology as a subspecialty. The benefit of residency is, no science, but you get to see patients. And, as a lot of us have alluded to, that bladder cancer is not just like a one and done type of a disease. It's multiple trips. It's a heavy burden, not only for the patients, but their families and the clinicians. And really seeing how patients who were coming from rural parts of California, the different types of treatment that they were getting than the patients who had access to a comprehensive cancer center, again, really, reignited my interest in looking at disparities work. So I'm really glad to be doing both of those things where I am right now. But tomorrow I'll be discussing my basic science project on the innate immune system and how it participates in cancer immunosurveillance, particularly the natural killer cells. And I want to focus in on the receptor CD56, which has been sort of like lumped in as any other receptor to identify a cell, but what we now know is that it not only can help prognosticate patients, but it really plays a very important role in making sure these natural killer cells do what they do best, which is attack the not only infected cells or so they can attack tumors. So how does CD56 actually participate in bladder cancer cytotoxicity? I think is a really important way, project so that we can sort of understand how we can exploit this for further treatment and understanding, again, the biology of bladder cancer. So again, thank you for listening, and I'm really excited to be here.
So next we have Dr. Rafi Taluktar from the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. He has mentors. I don't know if you've heard of them. Dr. Petros Grivas is one, and Dr. Evan Yu is the other. And the project that he'll be discussing is frequency and nature of genomic alterations in ERBB2 altered urothelial bladder cancer. Dr. Taluktar is a medical oncology fellow, received his MD at University of Texas, San Antonio, and then completed his residency at Baylor College of Medicine, where he will be returning as an assistant professor.
Hi guys, and thank you, Dr. Cates, for that amazing introduction. So one thing I didn't mention is I'm starting my faculty job at Baylor in 4 days on Monday, so a little nervous, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, my name is Rafi. I finished my fellowship at University of Washington at Fred Hutch back in June. I was a chief fellow there as well too, and I had the distinct honor and privilege working with Dr. Petros Grivas as my primary mentor. One of the things I was asked to talk about was why I got interested in bladder cancer. So the thing is, after I graduated residency, I was gung-ho about leukemia. I wanted to go and treat leukemia. I wanted to be an acute leukemist, and that's what I told everyone during my fellowship applications and interviews. And when I matched here, I specifically came to Seattle to work with some of the people in the leukemia department. But 4 months into fellowship, 4 months in, I did a GU oncology rotation, and the very first person I worked with was Petros. And 3 years later, I'm here. Essentially, the reason I'm really interested in bladder cancer is kind of threefold, and my colleagues here kind of exemplified. It's a very complex and morbid disease. We, especially in patients that have metastatic disease, we are getting better, but we can do a better job of improving outcomes and also improve their life, their QOL. So, and of all my patients I've seen during fellowship, including continuity and working with Petros, it was a bladder cancer patients that I connected with the most. Second is in terms of research. When Petros convinced me to do bladder cancer after that first day of working with him, I was surprised to see what a rapidly evolving field it is. Even compared to 3 years ago, the treatment landscape's kind of changed, and every few months we hear about a new FDA approval, a new landmark study coming out, and so it's a really exciting time, for us as clinician researchers and for our patients, and thirdly, I essentially want to be like Petros, so that's why I got into bladder cancer. So in terms of my research focus in bladder cancer, I kind of have different interests. One of them is in variant histology, bladder cancer, and helping coming up with trials in that space. And on Friday we'll kind of talk more about that. And second is kind of looking at real world evidence of patients with advanced bladder cancer that were treated with immune checkpoint inhibitors, and we've actually published a lot of important work looking at prognostic factors of these patients that get immune checkpoint inhibitors. The project I'll be talking about tomorrow is a project we worked with Foundation Medicine, including Dr. Jeff Ross and Dr. Petros, and we essentially investigated over 1,000 patients with metastatic bladder cancer that Foundation One has tissue, and we evaluated those patients that had ERBB2 alterations, and we kind of did a descriptive analysis and looked at co-alterations and some pathologic and staining data with those. The reason that's important is, as you may know, ERBB2 or HER2 is becoming a very important and promising target in bladder cancer. So we're hoping that this will kind of help provide some insight, insight to patient and patient selection as these trials, come up and running and we learn more about this. And lastly, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Diane. I want to thank Rebecca, everyone in the BCAN committee, for this honor, to be a John Quale fellow. It's such a distinguished group with my current and former GQTF fellow. So, thank you.
I've never thought about the acronym GQTF until that moment. I have to think more about that and how it can be utilized in the future. So next is Dr. Hong Trong, who's a urologic oncologist at Penn State. Like any great mentee, she has listed 3 mentors, which I like that. I like spreading the load. Dr. Taluktar Garv, Dave DeGraff, and Mary Carlo. Received her MD at Jefferson Medical College and residency in urologic surgery at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. In personal statement, she says, having the opportunity to present my research proposal during the think tank meeting would affirm the importance of inherited cancer genetics as a platform to advance the field of bladder and upper tract cancer research. The John Quale Travel Fellowship will acknowledge the worthiness of integrating genetic testing into the care of patients with urothelial cancer and strengthen my position for the future.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. As Dr. Kate mentioned, my name is Hong Trong. I am a first-year urologic oncologist at Penn State Hershey. My clinical practice involves taking care of patients with bladder and upper tract cancer, and my research interest is in deciphering the genetics of patients with urothelial carcinoma. So what motivated me to study urothelial carcinoma is probably the same reason that all of you are here and the same reason that Dr. Elizabeth Connie so articulately say, which is, is when you take care of patients with bladder cancer, it is very hard to ignore the struggle and not wanting to do better. It's hard to ignore the discrepancy between the significant advances that we have in bladder cancer management and the incredible surgery that we're able to do to take out the bladder to reconstruct the urinary tract with the unpredictability of treatment outcomes and the side effects of the treatment that the patient have to face. One particular difference for patients with bladder cancer, the relationship that I develop with them as a physician is that because the side effect is so significant that you end up developing a long-term relationship and you know the patient more intimately than other disease process. So one way that I hope to change the outlook for patients with bladder and upper tract cancer is to understand more about the genetic mechanisms of how this cancer develops, with the hope of finding better way to predict treatment, identify patients at risk, which go along with the project that I'm going to present tomorrow and the project I hope to do in the future. So the project that I will present tomorrow is a project that I did while I was a fellow at Memorial Sloan Kettering, where we study over 800 patients, separate from the initial report that that my mentor, Dr. Marie Carlo, published in JCO. A patient with bowel, bladder, and upper tract cancer who underwent genetic testing, and this confirmed our initial report that high proportion of patients with upper tract and bladder cancer do harbor genetic predispositions, and about 10% of those patients have genetic predisposition in high-risk gene, meaning moderate or high-penetrant gene, where if you carry a mutation, there's at least 2 times the risk of cancer development. And it's confirmed that patients with early age of onset and urothelial carcinoma of the upper tract have higher predisposition. The question that I would like to explore in future projects is how do we implement this knowledge into the standard of care for patients, and what does that implication have for patients? Does it cause them additional distress as they navigate their cancer journey? What benefit will they ultimately receive from knowing this information? And with that, I hope to also get feedback from the patient advocates and the experts in the room. Thank you.
Wonderful. Next, we have Dr. Jillian Vanda who's a postdoctoral fellow at UBC, University of British Columbia. The title of her project is Genomic Dissection of ERBB2 as a Predictive Biomarker in Metastatic Urothelial Carcinoma. Her mentors are Dr. Alex Wyatt, Bernie Eigel, Kim Chi, and Dr. Peter Black. So once again, loading the boat. I love that. Dr. Vanda received her PhD in experimental medicine from the University of British Columbia, and specializes in the application of circulating tumor DNA in genitourinary cancers.
Hi, so Dr. Vanda, very well done on the pronunciation. And as you mentioned, I have a number of mentors, and I think that really speaks to why I'm here and why I'm interested in bladder cancer, and really the importance of cross-collaboration between specialties. But I have one disclaimer. I am not a physician. I don't have a medical degree. I am a genomics scientist. I have a PhD, and I think that sets me a little bit apart. I don't see patients. I just look at their DNA and blood samples. So I have an evolutionary biology background. I did my master's at University of Toronto, and then I moved into Dr. Alexander Wyatt's lab at the Vancouver Prostate Centre, really within months of him starting his faculty position. And immediately realized that there's so much tremendous opportunity for the use of liquid biopsy, and that as an evolutionary biologist, I can bring this perspective because cancer, really, you can study evolution on a scale that's not possible in other settings, and that really impacts treatment resistance and response. And so that's sort of the focus of what I've been doing these last few years. But I'm also mentored by Dr. Kim Chi at BC Cancer, and together we are co-directors of a provincial biobank where we collect blood samples for circulating tumor DNA analysis, as well as archival formalin-fixed tissue from patients across the province of British Columbia. We have over 550 bladder cancer patients in that biobank as of a few months ago, and we've been collecting them since 2016. And this really allows for this sort of democratization of research and care, because these samples can be collected anywhere by any medical laboratory staff, and then they're shipped to our central facility for processing, DNA extraction, and analysis. So we can get samples from all over, and patients don't have to come into these medical centers to get care. They just have to be enrolled into the program and consent for the collection of these blood samples, which are pretty standard of care. But bladder cancer, obviously Alex Wyatt and Kim Chi are mainly prostate cancer focused. So I had the fortune to be mentored as well by Bernie Eigel at BC Cancer and Peter Black at the Vancouver Prostate Centre, who are key bladder cancer leaders, and they really showed me what it would mean to have someone working on the genomics there, and what was the potential here for genomics to help with identifying treatments for patients, treatment sequencing, and then monitoring for response. And so that's really what we focus on doing. Everything that we do is in collaboration with all of these groups. We have our wet lab scientists, our computational scientists, our oncologists, and our urologists. And that's really what's led me to where I am. So I'm a postdoctoral fellow now and hoping to start my own independent laboratory in a few years' time. So the research I'm sharing with you tomorrow is focused on ERBB2 and looking at that through the lens of circulating tumor DNA and how can we think about utilizing that as opposed to standard of care immunohistochemistry from tissue. And so this is really, really preliminary research, but I'm doing that on purpose because this is a think tank, and the whole point is to get everybody's opinions and questions and to use that and incorporate into what I'm doing. And so, if you have a chance to stop by tomorrow, I'd really love to hear what your questions are and some of your feedback so that I can, direct my research, think about samples or data that I haven't collected and how can we address the most important questions to help these patients. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Evangelia Vlahu, who's a postdoc. How do I do, Petros?
You did a great job.
Okay. Who's a postdoctoral fellow at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. The title of her project is Enfortumab vedotin-related cutaneous toxicity correlates with improved progression-free survival and radiographic response in patients with urothelial cancer, a single-center experience. Her mentors are Dr. Jeannie Hoffman-Sensis and Dr. David McConkey. Dr. Vlahu is a postdoctoral fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. She received her MD at the University of Petros School of Medicine in Greece. And her goal is to become a physician scientist and conduct clinical and translational research on urothelial cancer.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elena Vlahu, and I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the Johns Hopkins Greenberg Bladder Cancer Institute. First of all, I would like to thank BCAN for this amazing opportunity. It's truly an honor for me to be a John Quale Travel Fellow and have the opportunity to present my work to all of you. So, as Dr. Kate said, I graduated from University of Petros Medical School in Greece last year and started my postdoc here at Johns Hopkins soon after. My long-term career goal is to be a physician scientist doing clinical and translational research in urothelial cancer. And after completing my 2-year research fellowship, I plan to start my internal medicine residency and medical oncology fellowship. So as a medical student, I knew I was interested in research and I participated in many projects, but initially I didn't really know what exactly I wanted to do. And my first contact with patients with cancer was actually through one of those research projects that required me to call around 50 patients with liver cancer and collect their clinical information. And by talking to all these people and discussing their perspective and their care all the way from the time of diagnosis until the present, I realized that what I was mostly interested in was taking care of them and following them longitudinally as a medical oncologist. A few years later, I attended the World Hellenic Biomedical Association Summer School, where I met so many inspiring people, including, of course, Dr. Grivas, and my interest in cancer research only grew. But what really drove me to urothelial cancer was when I first joined the GBCI as a final year medical student for a 1-month elective and met my amazing mentors, Dr. Hoffman-Sensis and Dr. David McConkey, as well as the rest of the truly fantastic GBCI team. During this program, I was so intrigued by urothelial cancer research, and particularly by the role and the mechanism of ADCs, or antibody-drug conjugates, that I actually decided to extend my elective for an additional 2 months. And then even after the end of the program, I continued to work on my project remotely from Greece, of course with the help of Dr. Hoffman-Sensits. And that was the project that actually led to my initial first author paper. I think that, especially in the recent years, a lot of progress has been made in urothelial cancer treatment. And what makes it so exciting is that now, with the introduction of all these newer treatments like immunotherapy and ADCs, we can give treatment to even more patients and for longer, and we can also give options to those that due to comorbidities cannot get cisplatin. My research focuses primarily on the role of ADCs in advanced urothelial cancer. And what we are currently investigating is the association between enfortumab vedotin-related skin toxicity and patient outcomes. As you know, no biomarker of response currently exists for enfortumab, and skin toxicity tends to appear early on. So what we did was a retrospective study of 78 patients treated with EV monotherapy at Johns Hopkins, and we actually found that skin toxicity correlated with significantly improved response rate, disease control rate, and progression-free survival, or PFS, with a median PFS of 6.3 months in patients who experienced skin toxicity and 1.7 months in those that didn't. I think that with further confirmation of this observation in larger cohorts and prospective studies, this could really be a very promising clinical biomarker of response. And I really look forward to discussing more about our findings tomorrow during the poster session with all of you. Thank you.
So I'll just close with a challenge, not to the Quale Fellows, but the rest of you. In 2015, when I was a Quale Fellow, I gave a poster session, and Brant Inman walked up to me, I don't know if he's here, walked up to me and said, here's why I was studying, I was giving BCG to a rat model of bladder cancer and looking at doing flow cytometry on the bladders. He said, here's why what you're doing is not going to work. He said, here's what you're doing, it's not going to work. Told me that for a couple minutes, and then said, now can we go sit down for like 30 minutes and I can tell you what your research design should be? And that's what we did. I never met the guy. So I'm going to challenge all of you to be a little bit like that, and have the confidence to go up to everybody like that, and engage in real conversation. And Petros, did you want to say anything?
Covered perfectly.
Okay, perfect. If everybody could this group could stick around for a picture afterwards. Any announcements we need to make? Okay, perfect.
And thanks everybody for attending.
The future is bright. We welcome all of you to the bladder cancer family. This is a community that has become a family, and we're doing great things, and we really look forward to more great things with all of you on board. And now you guys are going to stay for a photo. Everyone else, I really, really, really want you to go downstairs to the Northgate Grill for happy hour, because they need to transform this room into the magic of dinner, and we only have an hour to get that done. So if you could please go down, continue your conversations. I know you're all looking forward to picking their brains tomorrow at the happy hour in the afternoon and reading their research posters. So go on down now, and you stick around. Thank you so much.